Hello, everyone, and welcome to Virtual Reality and Interior Design, an introduction to VR. This is workshop number one. My name is John Coleman, and I will be leading this workshop, which is really an introduction and an invitation into virtual reality for design, where we can begin to invite people to step inside not only our designs, but our imaginations. A little brief overview of this workshop. It's going to be in five sections. We're doing an introduction. We'll talk a little bit about how VR hits design, talk about how to get started, and then we'll specifically talk about Unity as the main software for using virtual reality for interior design, and then we'll go into a little bit of a demonstration. So first, let's start with an introduction. What is virtual reality? So virtual reality is stepping into another world, another dimension, it's leaving behind this existence and stepping into a digitally curated space, a space that you design, create, and craft. This is about providing an interactive experience for your viewers, reviewers, and clients to fully realize the space that you've envisioned, designed, and developed. It's the final step before actual construction, the virtual habitation of your design space. It's as close to total immersion as is currently technologically possible. Immersion is the industry term to describe technology that attempts to replace our known reality with another. At our current technological capabilities, this requires a small suspension of disbelief, but the gap is closing rapidly. Every year, new headsets are being released with greater fidelity and finer resolution. One of the biggest examples is Apple Vision Pro or Valve's new Frame headset. There's a big difference between VR versus AR and MR, and this graph represents that virtual reality being VR, augmented reality is AR, and then MR is mixed reality. And these examples have been seen in popular culture recently as augmented reality can be seen through your phone, like Pokemon Go, which was popular a long time ago, or the IKEA Place app, while mixed reality allows you to show design visualization where virtual objects react to a real world environment. And VR is the most immersive that we are currently able to do. There's lots and lots of applications for VR. We're seeing in the medical field, we're seeing it in engineering and mechanics, science, we're seeing it in automobile design. And then what the introduction that most people are receiving is through gaming. And there's a lot of great games out there. But one in particular that has really set the scene, and that is this one on the bottom right, which is Half-Life Alyx. So it's one of the earliest VR games, and it's still one of the most profound breakthroughs in virtual reality. And it came through the company Valve, who just released the frame. It's called Half-Life Alyx. It released in 2020, and to this day is the definitive VR experience, and not just for gaming. It is an action adventure puzzle based shooter, but it laid the foundation for ease of navigation, graphic fidelity, and environmental haptics. It's so much so that this is a college professor who did an entire lecture on glass in the introductory scene in the game where there's markers available, and the fidelity and the hand tracking is so precise that he was able to give entire lectures from this, albeit sci-fi dystopian scene, but was able to do it in a way that captivated his student audience with the technology of VR that was developed by Half-Life Alyx. There's a lot of VR applications that this is being applied to. We see it in building information modeling, such as Revit, or even just precision modeling, such as SketchUp or Blender, and then even more BIM like ArchiCAD. But we're really getting into virtual reality and design, which meaning virtual reality is an extremely powerful tool because it's an experiential capstone of design development and ideation. If photoreal renders bring orthographic drawings to life, well, then VR allows you to get inside your design. It's the end of the frame, which is a really interesting idea. Until VR, all visualization, drawings, renders, photography, film, are mediums bound by a frame, a box, or a canvas. Well, this has created profound implications for framing views, composition, and perspective, and triangulation of the eye. But VR, however, removes that frame, creating an entirely new platform or venue within which to showcase design ideas via full immersion. So instead of carefully creating a framed scene, as we're used to doing, the VR designer must fully develop the entirety of the design space because the viewer is not a viewer anymore, but a user, meaning the person wearing the VR headset has autonomy, freedom, and choice to move about the space at their discretion, as anyone would in an actual space. Well, this puts a lot more pressure on the designer to craft a holistic, detailed environment from any perceptible approach. You never know where a user might go poking around. This is good news because as designers, we want as much control as possible. Operating in virtual reality affords the designer the opportunity to assert their design intent in every square inch of the space. With VR, the designer can fully realize design ideas, create a space for clients to participate in design decisions, meaning they can help with finished materials, lighting, and specs. And ultimately, the designer can sell the design concept. As designers, we are obsessive about visual communication because that is the medium and language we use to get our design ideas across to those we need to see it. With VR, however, we can open up the parameters of visual communication because we are opening up more senses for users to see or get our spaces. Because with VR, they can feel it. They can feel the scale by looking and walking around. They can feel the poetics of the space by gauging light and materiality. They can literally feel the space by interacting with rigged haptics if such a suit is available for your demonstration. In the end, if you want a client to understand your design concept, having them live in it through VR is the lowest barrier entry with the biggest impact on future habitation. Why? Because with VR, users can literally step into your imagination. So, how do we get started in VR? We've talked about this, but there's a lot of the front line of VR is video games. At least it's reaching the most people. There's a lot of gamers out there. Steam has their own one. PlayStation, MetaQuest has a few, up to three at this point. HTC Vive is a more developer side, but also good for gaming. And there's full haptic suits. And like I mentioned, Valve just released the Frame, which will help rival the Apple Vision Pro. But architecture and interior design focuses on translating imaginative spaces to virtually habitable spaces using modeling tools and rigging those models to VR hardware. So this is where we come in. Translating imaginative spaces is design ideation. Creating virtually habitable spaces using modeling tools is precision modeling. And there's a bunch of different modeling software we can use. Rigging those models happens in the actual software. We're going to talk about which one specifically is a great use case in a second. And then we're talking about virtual reality hardware, and those are the headsets that we've been talking about. So on precision modeling, first we're tackling concept and design development. First step is to sketch. Drawing is thinking. Second is to think from the inside out. If you're going to be inviting people into your design to inhabit as users, not viewers, we need to really be thinking about what their entire experience is going to be like. Philip Johnson said that architecture exists to create great interiors. And I love this quote because we are building spaces and creating volumes and shapes in spaces for to feel alive. And in the end, interior design, it is this architecture. It's just air conditioned. There's a wide array of VR ready programs. So we mentioned BIM, Rev, and ArchiCAD, SketchUp, Blender, Rhino, and Maya. But if the point of VR is to invite users to experience our spaces, then immense attention to detail is required. So when we're doing our precision modeling, users are going to be able to zoom in and walk up to everything. So our materials need to be right, our assets. These places need to feel not just alive in how we design them, but lived in as how we set them up in modeling. As far as VR software that you would use to launch VR, well, Unreal Engine is a leader. The Blender has capability, 3ds Max, of course, and Cinema 4D, very similar. Same with Maya. But the one we want to focus on here, which has a really low barrier entry, easy to use toggle and slider interface, is Unity. So Unity is good for devs and designers. First, it's good for devs. The platform's built to smoothly integrate between a wide variety of software and hardware, making it highly versatile for developers and software engineers. But it's also good for designers because it's toggle and slider based, meaning it's highly accessible for students and newcomers to VR. There's a vast availability of community created assets online through the Unity Hub and resources, troubleshooting, and a great learning community. So like I mentioned, there's the asset store, There's learning resources and community resources. Now, it works with MetaQuest, which is formerly Oculus, HTC Vive, mobile VR apps, and the Apple Vision Pro, which is available to students in the Outkick makerspace. Okay, part four, the Unity VR Startup Guide. As a part of this workshop, I'm providing a go-to launch document to help get you started in VR. And in between this workshop and workshop two, so this workshop is an introduction and setting the stage for how and why VR is important. And in between now and workshop two, please use this document to not only get started by downloading the Unity Hub and getting the Unity editor ready to work, but also working on a design, a model, potentially your final model from design development or 2326, or if you're in studio, any of those studio files. And this document will allow you to talk about how to get your SketchUp model watertight, how to import it into Unity, how to prepare it and rig it for VR. This is a specific process, and then a final check and run for that. If you need a copy of this, feel free to email me. Here's my email. I'll leave it on the screen. It'll also be linked here on YouTube. And then it's also a printed copy here before you leave. Feel free to visit unity.com and create an account as a student. This will give you free access. And then, like I mentioned, download the Unity Hub and install the latest Unity editor. Now it's time for the demonstration. I will end this video so that we can do that. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. And thank you and happy VRing.